Bit of a first on Off the Podium today. For the very first time, we're actually speaking to somebody directly related to a former guest, which is quite exciting today. We are speaking today to a two-time Olympian, multiple Oceanic champion in the sport of judo, a Commonwealth Games bronze medalist, and the brother of a certain Josh Katz. This guy goes by the name of Nathan Katz, and he's with me right now on Off the Podium. Nathan, first of all, mate, pleasure to welcome you to Off the Podium. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks very much, mate. It's a pleasure to chat to you.
I don't know how I went with my introduction there just in terms of that, because I think I'm just blown away by the fact that it's taken us a couple of hundred guests to get to a brother or a relative or something along those lines, because obviously we talk to many guests on the show who have equally talented siblings or family members, but here we are right now. I've got to say right now, just Nathan versus Josh, how are we going to win the Nathan column right now, just in terms of our listeners? They've heard Josh a couple of times. Are there any secrets here right now that we can spill on Josh to take him down a peg so that we can put, wins in the Nathan column for people battling out the Katzes right now listening?
Bit of tea on Josh. No, not really. He's pretty, what you see is pretty much what you get. He's had a pretty tough year, but he's done really well. So I don't know a whole lot. I think whenever we present in schools, it's always that big brother always wins. But I'm now a little while removed from competition, so I don't know if that's the case in a judo setting either anymore. So nothing too juicy for you, unfortunately.
We'll see if we can change that by the end of this episode. I think it's a bit unique, sort of going over your background and journey into the sport, Nathan, because obviously the first time we spoke to Josh, we learned about sort of his journey, how it came from, your parents and everything along those lines. So I feel like obviously probably a very similar story in that. But I'd love to just hear from you what your perspective was like living in the house with an Olympian mother, a father who obviously very much involved in the sport too. I mean, was it a case for you that judo was always the way you were going to go into, the family business essentially?
Yeah, I think so. I think obviously it was a very strong judo household, and I think just most of my memories of being young and my childhood are in and around judo, and mum and dad being really involved. And I was obsessed with it always, since I was a really little kid. I loved watching seniors. I loved talking to my dad about it. I loved talking to mum. I just loved all the facets of it. And I think it helped that, I guess, from a pretty young age, I was relatively successful and was quite good, but I just loved it. I think I love the idea of fighting and wrestling, especially a lot of young boys, they love that concept anyway. And if Josh and I did that at home, we'd get in trouble for putting sort of marks and stuff in the wall. But if we went to judo and we threw someone, they landed on their back, then we got medals or trophies. So it was something that we really took to from a young age. And I think it was just something, I guess, a way that we were always really connected with both our parents, and not that we didn't really have anything else outside of judo with them, but it was just something, I guess, that was a really strong bond that we got to share. And Dad was our main coach growing up, and I guess some of my favorite competition memories have been walking out to competitions with him, getting ready to coach me at a local RSL level through to an Olympic game. So I think it was just something that always was a huge part of our family growing up, and now it's still Sunday dinners, I'd say 80% talking about something to do with judo. So it's still a massive part of our life, but I guess that's sort of our dynamic growing up.
It's not often that you grow up in a household where you're encouraged to fight in a way, is it? Usually it's sort of the opposite. Obviously, as you said, more so outside in a competition, Matt, don't want to dent the walls, which, how many walls did get dented and kind of things get damaged, I guess, over the years?
Yeah, a few. My parents had a waterbed as well. So growing up, Josh and I would essentially do judo, and the waterbed would be the mat that we'd be aiming to throw on. And I remember one day in particular, I don't remember exactly who threw who, but someone's foot potentially put a small hole in their bedroom wall, and that didn't go down terrifically well. And especially when your parents are your coaches as well, it really puts a unique spin on getting in trouble at home and how that translates to judo. So
wow.
There were a couple, but I think as we got older and a little bit bigger, most of the time you were too beat up and tired and sore from training that you sort of just saved it from there. You were happy to have a break when you got home.
Didn't quite burst the waterbed? Was that ever on the agenda, that a couple of leaks popped out of the bed at all?
I think it was slightly deflated a few times,
right,
but never anything serious. Thankfully, that wouldn't have been that wouldn't have been good.
It's
anyone.
I don't know if it was a great missed invention or something that we need to forget as human beings that a waterbed existed, because I remember like as a kid, I think a friend's parents had one, and I thought it was the coolest thing ever. Right? Like, wow, a waterbed, this is amazing. But like in hindsight, like it's kind of a weird thing to sleep on, a big bed of water. I don't know if that will ever come back into fashion or not.
I doubt it. But at the time, it was great for the purpose of doing judo in their bedroom. So,
Yeah.
mum and dad's waterbed for sure.
Which I mean, there's also that case of, as kids, we obviously look up to our parents and we have a variety of relationships with our parents. But what's it like to be able to go to school and talk about your cool parents who, your mum's an Olympian? Like, I mean, that's kind of something that all of a sudden you're all like, look at this, look what mum's got from Seoul in Korea. Like, this is a cool merch and everything like that. That must be a cool thing to be able to brag to your friends about.
Yeah, I honestly don't think we talked about it that much. So I think judo being like a smaller sport in Australia and a little bit more niche, obviously it gets a little bit less attention and it's less popular here. So I guess like compared to say if one of the kids at school, the dad played in the NRL, like it would be huge. I think with us, we were like just much more quiet about it. And mum also was someone that was very quiet about her achievements and the things that she'd done. Like she does also, like most people that she deals with probably don't know that like she's been to the Olympics and that Josh and I have. Like I mean, many more people probably know about Josh and I because she's probably much more open to talking like about some of the stuff we've done. But no, she's very quiet when it comes to, I guess, like her own achievements. And so it was probably not something that we pushed all the time. Like it would come up for sure and probably mostly come up because it was always like, oh, how did you get into judo? Like it's not sort of something that everyone knows or everyone just knows where to find like their local judo club. And that's sort of how it related to mum and dad and I guess like the path and journey that they'd had as well.
I think there needs to be something in retrospect for athletes who competed in demonstration sports that then ultimately become full sports in Olympics. That there should be, they are classified as an Olympian rather than just a demonstration sport Olympian or something like that. Because I don't know, like it's long gone are the days of having demonstration sports at the Olympics. But I think that just something needs to be done because I remember when we had Dean Hewitt on from curling and sort of his dad competed, back when curling was a demonstration sport. And yet they would say that Dean and Tali were Australia's first ever curlers, which technically they are. But then you've got family members who are doing that. So for your mum, of course, demonstration sport. I don't know. I think there needs to be something in retrospect, Nathan, that can kind of honour our great Olympians who were in demonstration sports.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the AOC does a good job. Like they still recognize in all of the media that Josh and I have ever done, they recognize mum as an Olympian and they talk about her games. I think from like the greater Olympic Games perspective, I don't think things like your post-nominal OLY and stuff like that, they're entitled to, which is silly. But I mean, I don't use that on anything either. So I guess I agree with you completely. I think, I guess I don't think mum cares. I don't think she's like lost too much sleep over it, but I agree. Like I think anyone that has competed at an Olympic Games like deserves that recognition and should get to own all those titles as well, for sure.
Were you involved in any other sports outside of judo? Were there any other potential sports we could be talking to you right now as Nathan Katz Olympian in?
No, I mean, I played a lot of other sport and I played like at a decent level of tennis until I was maybe like 13, but like at a state level, but not any further than that. And I think at that age, I was already really starting to do well in judo. And I think I understood because of mum and dad and their experiences, like I understood what was going to be required to get to a really good level of judo. And it's sort of that age, 13, 14, where you just sort of can't split your time between everything. Judo is starting to be an everyday thing and tennis as well. Those boys are starting to train full time. So I don't really think I had the capacity. Like I was good at all sports, but not to the extent of really being able to potentially be elite in something. And I think that made the decision for judo easy, but it was also just the thing that I was like by far the most passionate about. And I think if I lost touch footy at school or rugby league at school, I would like be pissed off and I'd sort of have the shits. But for judo, like it really impacted me, winning and losing. And I think that's when you know, like this is the thing that obviously you're much more passionate about and you really deeply care about.
Which I was going to say it's that passion, right? Because yeah, every kid plays 1,000 different sports, right? But there's always one. There's always one that you feel that desire towards and everything along those lines. Did you kind of once you switched lanes and focused on judo, was it always the Olympics? Was that kind of what you looked at as the ultimate goal for you as a judoka to reach an Olympic Games?
Yeah, for sure. I think beyond that, like our goal was always, or my goal was always like to win an Olympic medal. And I think growing up, I just watched so many videos of like the Olympics at judo and the World Championships. And it was back when like there weren't even DVDs, like there were the videos that you had to put into the VHR, I think it's called machine. And some of those tapes are just like absolutely battered because I just watched them to death. Like I just love the idea. And I love the Olympics anyway. Like obviously mum and dad had their experiences and then they both worked really closely at the Sydney Games. So we were sort of in and around that a little bit more young. And I think just like that fascination and like fantasization around the Olympics just like was so strong in our house. And I obviously knew of some older guys that had been to the Olympics in judo and sort of looked at them like they were just like these heroes. So it was always definitely something, I think, from a really young age, and especially when judo was the only sport that I was doing that I was like really fixated on wanting to get there one day for sure.
I know we've talked about it before on this show with Josh and Katarina when we've talked judo on this show. But I mean, I remember vividly in Sydney when Maria got the bronze, and it's sort of like it was because it came obviously in a sport where, as an Australian, we're not used to winning a medal in, right? So it's sort of like puts a bit more of attention on that. I mean, you were, if my maths are correct, what about 5 during Sydney? But like obviously, do you remember much around her winning that bronze and what the judo community was like in Australia, coming away with what still is our second only ever medal in the sport at the Olympics?
No, I think I was just too young to have much memory. Like probably my only memory of Sydney in general was I remember mum and dad were working in the judo and we left there, must have been late one night. I don't know if we were at an event or something. And we just happened to be walking around Olympic Park. And it just happened to be the night that Kathy Freeman won her Olympic final. We weren't in the stadium. We were just walking outside. And I just like still like really distinctly remember like what that sounded like. It was just like this eruption of noise, like just this crazy loud noise. And then it like turned out to be Kathy's Olympic gold medal run. So that's like my only real memory of Sydney. I don't remember. Obviously, we grew up pretty closely with Maria and Daniel was my coach as the national coach for 10 or 12 years. So I've had a really close relationship with him, but I think it definitely helps to be able to see that. And like, I think you can only really be what you're able to see. And by knowing that that was something that someone in Australia had done, and granted, she did a huge amount of her career in Hungary prior to coming to Australia, it was still someone that had AUS on their judo gi and an Australian flag. And I think that made it feel more possible for for the next generation of Australian athletes for sure.
Because it's obviously that tricky aspect with a sport like judo. As you said, it's not a huge sport in Australia and unfortunately probably never will be a huge sport in Australia. But when something like that can happen, whatever colour of a medal to really kind of add some focus on it. We've had a lot of taekwondo athletes on the show, archers on the show, sports where a medal might come every now and then, but it's obviously not that common. But it's obviously that kind of unfortunate aspect of a fringe sport like that where it almost takes a medal for anybody to really take attention to it. So I can imagine that's sort of been something throughout your career and your family sort of in the sport being so heavily involved in to try and get attention on the sport that would lead to maybe a medal at the Olympics, because you've got to build success to get there, but sometimes you need success to build that sort of momentum, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's like a responsibility of the guys now. And I always sort of felt that when I was at an Olympics, like not that you're there to do media and things like that, but it's like really important that you give a really good representation because, and you're completely right. It only takes a couple of results for the sport to really blow up. And I know in Sydney, after Lauren Burns won in Taekwondo and membership like went through the roof. And I don't know if judo was the same with Maria around Sydney, but it would only take the same again if Australia could win an Olympic medal or Olympic gold medal in Brisbane, say, for example, then it would blow up here too, because Australian kids grow up wanting to be like the stars that they see on TV. And if they don't see Australian judo stars on TV, then they don't know that's a possibility. They want to be like Emma McKeon and Ariane Titmus, and they're very worthwhile people to try and be like. But if we can have the same level of athletes in judo, then there's no reason I think that judo couldn't be. I mean, it's never going to be athletics swimming in Australia, but globally it's huge. So then, yeah, I think it really only takes like a couple of sort of people to break through and to have personalities that people are drawn to. And you look at like Canoe Slalom and the Fox sisters, like that's a much smaller sport than judo. But because of the huge results they've had and like the great people that they are too, then it's a really popular sport in Australia now because everyone knows Jess and Naomi. So
They know Josh too, let's be honest.
Yeah. It's not impossible, but it's a challenge for judo in Australia for sure.
It's interesting you say that because, I'm a 13-year-old kid watching Sydney. I dreamed of being an Olympian, yet I host an Olympic podcast, go figure. But like of all the sports that I watched and all the gold medals and medals that I saw Australia win, the one that stood out to me the most and that I wanted to do the most was archery. I watched Simon Fairweather win that gold medal in Sydney. And of all the sports, I'm like, I want to do archery. That's the one that I want to do. And it's kind of, it's interesting, isn't it, where you'd say that with the kids watching it, that, yeah, a bunch of them are going to maybe be watching an Ariane and Emma and great, let's have more swimmers. We want to keep on winning medals in those. But it just takes one to be that Jess Fox, that Naomi Fox. I look at the winter athletes, sort of look at how freestyle skiing and snowboarding is booming, whereas 20 or so years ago, nobody was doing those in Australia. So it just takes one person to watch you, to watch Josh, to watch Katarina, anybody at the Olympics, right? That come Brisbane, as you said, this drought that we're in right now for a medalist time in Australia at the Olympics for judo could be turned around.
Absolutely. I'm hopeful that we won't have to wait until Brisbane. Hopefully.
Exactly. LA, right? Yeah.
In LA. I know Josh is going to have another crack, and I think Aoife, to Katarina, I'm not sure, but there's another group of like really good young athletes that are hungry, and it's a big ask to win an Olympic medal in any sport, and judo as challenging as any. But I think there's a group now that have that really as a clear goal. So we'll see what they can sort of do over the next couple of years.
Your progression, so obviously ultimately we're going to get to Rio in a moment, your debut Olympics, but junior titles between 2012 and 2014, then Junior Oceanic Championships in 2014. You finished 9th at the Junior World Champs in 2015. I mean, sort of in that period when you're kind of progressing through those ranks, is Rio to you the goal? Like, are you sort of really looking at that? Are you looking more towards like 2020 sort of? At what point in your pathway are you thinking the next Olympics is realistic, or did Rio sort of come as a bonus maybe if you were aiming towards 2020?
Yeah, I think like the back end of 2014, I started to beat the best seniors like in Australia. And I think I sort of knew that it was a possibility, not necessarily something I was super fixated on, but a possibility. And then as sort of 2015 progressed, it was my last year in juniors, and I started to do okay internationally in juniors well. And at the back end of 2015, I had a really good result in Japan. I finished in the top 8 in a Grand Slam over there, and that sort of put me really firmly as a great chance of qualifying. I think it was more likely than not that I would qualify after I had that result. And I think that sort of made it really clear. Like, I don't know that Rio wasn't necessarily like a really fixated goal of mine, but I knew that that was something that I wanted to get to, and it was possible. And as sort of 2016 started, I was doing okay, and I was starting to progress a little bit, and it became something that was really quite possible. But I think at that time I was much less focused on outcomes and medals, and I was just like I just really was quite fearless. Like, I didn't care about, not that I didn't care about the result, I cared deeply about the result, but I just was able to compete, and I was just hungry, and I wanted to win, and I wanted to beat boys that people didn't think I could beat. And I just like sort of had that sort of young, cocky, little bit of a chip on your shoulder. Like, I just had a lot of belief in my ability, probably unwarranted considering like the results that I'd had at that point, but I thought I could beat all the best boys in the world. And like that sort of carried me in really well into seniors. I think a lot of the young guys sort of, and girls, are a little bit overwhelmed and like overawed when they transition into seniors, because these people that they've been watching on TV and idolizing and growing up watching are now your competition. I think I was just like excited. I just wanted to crack at trying to beat those boys and beat some and lost to many. But I think sort of not being too overwhelmed at that age and having that sort of young, dumb mindset helped me a little bit through that period for sure.
Is it kind of like when you go from primary school to high school, right? Like in primary school, you're at the top of the tree. You're the seniors, you're the top dogs of the school, and you kind of get that mentality when you go into like high school and you're thinking like, it's going to be the same. But now you're at the bottom of the pile. You're right back to where you were sort of beforehand. I mean, I remember that transition vividly, and I can imagine from juniors to seniors, like you're talking about that sort of bravado. Like, do you remember your first senior bout? Like, do you remember your first ever senior fight and what that was like? And was it a bit of a reality check of going, whoa, okay, this isn't where I was just competing recently?
Yeah, for sure. I think one of the best things that our parents did when I was young was they'd always enter me like in the, and I wanted it, like I was begging him, but I'd always fight my age, and I always wanted to fight the age above and the age above. And probably from 14, I was starting to fight seniors in Australia, like at national level events. And And it just taught me, I think, like how to beat people that maybe you weren't better than. And like you just had to be tough and you started to learn and to deal with losing. And there were some challenges that were just way too big. And I think I thought, the guys that had been to the Olympics prior and had a 14, 15-year-old, like they were far too good. But I think at 16, I fought in my first senior like international event. It was a World Cup in Samoa, and it was like a really big qualification event for the London Games. It was less than 12, so like 9 months before London. And in the first round, I was 16, like I was young, and in the first round I had the number one seed, like a Swiss boy who had some really big results, and I think he was in the top 20 odd in the world, and as a senior, and had just come. I remember I would always watch matches of the guys I was fighting, like to sort of get an idea of what I needed to do. And the match I watched of him prior was at the World Championships, which weren't that long before, and he'd thrown the current world champion, this guy that I thought was like the king. And he'd thrown him and he was beating him and he ended up losing. But I was just like, man, like this guy is obviously really good. And I fought him and I lost pretty comfortably, but like we went the whole time. We went 5 minutes. And I guess that was like a good eye-opening experience as to like what was to come and how sort of far I had to go. But I remember that wasn't overwhelming. It was just like, man, like it was exciting that there was still so much more I had to do. And I sort of had my foot wet. And I just loved that environment that I was around these seniors. And a lot of them were sort of coming through when I was like a really little kid. Like I was 16 in a team with guys that were trying to qualify maybe for the third or fourth Olympics. So I'd really been like in and around. I just loved being around those people that were better than me and sort of feeling like this young kid that just like had sort of something to prove. So I remember that pretty clearly. And then I remember Japan, that in 2015 was only my second like big world tour event where I had the really good results. So I sort of had like a taste of success there really, really quickly. And I think that made me really hungry to do more and to achieve more.
I want to touch on Birmingham and Commonwealth Games after, but was Glasgow a possibility in 2014? Because, I mean, I know we talked about this with Josh, sort of the in and out nature of judo that we seem to have at the Commonwealth Games. They can never seem to make their mind up whether it's in or not. But was 2014 ever a possibility for you for the Commonwealth Games?
So I think they were in July 2014. In March, I'd beaten the guy that went to the Commonwealth Games, but I don't know how old I was then. That's like 18. So I think I had like an injury early that year. So I sort of hadn't broken through and developed yet at senior level quite enough. Like I was probably a year away. If they were the following year, I probably would have gone. But at that age, I was still probably a year away, and the guys that went had deserved like their spot. So I was just a little bit away from Glasgow.
You weren't a little bit away then from Rio because ultimately you make that team. I mean, sort of what was that feeling like when you qualified for that and you'd sort of reached this goal? And sort of on a side note, did you qualify before or after Josh had qualified for Rio?
After, about 20 minutes after. So he fought in his final and then I won my final really soon after. So it was a really cool day and mum and dad were there and some friends and family and stuff. And it was a special day for sure, like knowing that we'd booked our ticket and we would go to our first Olympics was, especially doing that together, was always our dream. And that was a cool day, but I think it just really quickly shifted to like, right, we've always wanted to be there, but it was never about like getting some cool kit and being called an Olympian. Like it was always about like trying to see how far you could go. And we had a lot of it. I guess we had some attention for a niche sport. We got like a decent bit of media sort of attention and coverage because we were brothers and because of the story of our mom. And I think just because we were young and we just had so much belief and confidence in like what we could do, we sort of just didn't look back. We just like threw ourselves fully into preparing for, and it was probably different from Josh and myself. Josh being 18, he was so young and like probably like a touch out of his depth, even though he'd had some really, really good results as a senior whilst he was still a junior. I was probably like obviously a few years further along development-wise, especially physically. So yeah, when we arrived in Rio, it was the best. I still really remember like that first day in the village and a lot of sort of dreams coming true, but it was really just like I wanted to win. Like I knew how hard it was, but I knew that like I was really capable. So I don't think I like really soaked all that much of it in my first experience. Which
you talk about Josh being young. You're still only, 21 though, Nathan? Like you're not exactly old yourself. I mean, obviously it's still quite a young age. I mean, as a 21, like I can't even imagine going to the Olympics right now as a 37-year-old. I don't think I'm mentally mature enough. But I mean, 21, like that's still ridiculously young. I mean, can you ever say like you're mentally prepared? As you're kind of saying, you didn't really kind of soak it in, but like when it hits you, you get to Rio, this massive event. Like, can you ever feel that you're ever mentally prepared for something like that?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if you can really. I used to hear all the time growing up that, and from judo people and people that had been before, that the Olympics was like an event so different to anything else. And I was always just a bit like, why? Like, it's another competition. Obviously, I understand how big it is and that it's the biggest, but I didn't know why your mindset would be any different to what it is for any other competition. And my morning of the Olympics in Rio, I completely understood why it was a different competition and why that was so different, because like judo being a contact and a physical sport, there's a lot of big egos and there's a lot of like cockiness and bravado in the warm up, and all these guys that normally are puffing their chest out and are very confident and cocky. And there's not a lot of that at the Olympics. There's a lot of looking at the floor and sort of eyes darting around, and people feeling, I guess, the magnitude of the event. And I think I definitely have that appreciation now, how difficult it is to get there. And there's just no guarantees that, regardless of if you're the number one athlete in the world, like a lot can happen in 4 years. So I think everyone just feels that heightened sense of it has to happen today. And I felt it, but I really didn't feel, I felt nervous, but really no different to other competitions. I think I was just like, I really think I had that sort of young aura, sort of like not too, I don't think I really appreciated like the magnitude of how, I guess I didn't feel what some of those older athletes did, because I was so young. I was like, I'll be here again. Like, I just sort of took it for granted that like, this is not my only crack. Let's see what I can do. And I felt like I sort of had a little bit of nothing to lose. I knew I could beat a lot of the good boys, and I knew there were some boys that were better than me, but I was like, ultimately the Olympics is not about who the best athlete in the world is. It's just who the best athlete on that day. And I'd seen a lot of people win Olympic medals that certainly weren't picked to win them. So I was like, I don't know why I can't be any different. So I definitely felt nervous and excited and all those things, but I felt pretty good. I was pretty calm and present.
One thing you touched on before, you said obviously the attention that you and Josh got. I always love hearing this from athletes from sports that, again, don't often get a lot of attention in Australia. How did you find just media, doing interviews, sort of things like that in the lead up that probably for 3.5 years in between an Olympics, you're not doing as much as you are? I mean, like Channel 7 knocking on your door, news.com, like all these sort of things. How do you sort of deal with all of that kind of stuff?
I think, well, I don't remember it really being a massive issue. Like, I was always pretty comfortable talking and on cameras and things like that. And not that like I'd never had a huge profile like on social or anything like that either. So it wasn't like something that I was constantly doing, but I just never really had too much issue with it. And I sort of just looked at it as like a good opportunity to help like boost our profile, but also judo. And I always just sort of thought like, people care, but they're going to care a lot more if you can like go and win. So I was like always really, I guess like cognizant that all this attention is nice and feels great, but it's not there if you don't get the performances, and no one knocks on the door of the person that didn't qualify. So I fully understand that part of like how media works and the attention and things like that. And I think it was just like a part of it that was cool. And I honestly didn't give too much thought to it at that time.
Do you soak in the Olympic experience as well in terms of before, after? I'm thinking like village life, pin trading, obviously before an event and after an event, you've got different moods, no doubt. But I mean, how did you kind of find all that level? And obviously you went to two very unique Olympics, of course, Rio and Tokyo, very unique in their own aspects. But how did you soak up that sort of level of the Olympic experience?
Yeah, they were just very different. I think the first couple of days in Rio was a little bit overwhelming, and like there was a lot to take in and a lot of new experiences. And then it sort of shifted to preparing for a competition. And I guess like my Rio and Tokyo experiences were very different. I think I was really, really disappointed and like deflated after Rio. I was winning with about 20 seconds to go or 30 seconds to go. Against a boy I'd beaten before, and I had beaten him since, but I lost to him on this day. I made a mistake, and the nature of judo is it's finished just like that. And it was like a really winnable match, and just I sort of made a mistake and I lost, and that's how it goes. And I think it took me a really long time to like bounce back from that. I think I had even though I knew that I was certainly against the odds to win a medal or anything like that, I just had a lot of belief in like my capacity. I don't know. I just felt like I'd really let myself down. I was so disappointed after the game. So I still went out and enjoyed other sports and things like that. But I really didn't come home and want to talk about the Olympics. It wasn't something that I sort of felt really very proud of, like for some time, like maybe a couple of years. Like I knew I'd been, and I wasn't like, oh, the Olympics is trash or anything like that. I just like certainly didn't go around talking about it. And if I got asked about it, I'd sort of reply, but I wouldn't really ever elaborate. I'd just sort of give the answer that people wanted. Yeah, it was an amazing experience, and I'm really proud to represent Australia, which I now am absolutely. But I think at the time I really didn't soak that in too much. And I think how challenging it was to get to Tokyo. It was a really, really hard couple of years, and I had a lot of setbacks and a lot of good things happen, but a lot more bad. And I think how difficult it was to get to Tokyo, I think made me monumentally more appreciate like the significance of the Olympics and how difficult it is. And even though I didn't get the result I wanted in Tokyo, like I finished in the top 16 and it was a good day, especially under some challenging circumstances. But I appreciated just like how hard I'd worked, and I didn't feel like I had any more to give at the end of that experience. So I was like, you know what, there's nothing more that you can ask of yourself, really. It was still disappointing to not have the result that I wanted, but like there's also the reality that you might not be good enough to win an Olympic medal, which everyone has to deal with. So very different experiences. Tokyo, I look back on much more fondly from a performance perspective, but also Josh wasn't there. Mum and dad obviously couldn't be there because of COVID. So it was like, it was an empty sort of feeling as well. So they were just very, very different. They couldn't really be too much more further apart.
We'll touch on your Tokyo experience a little bit, because I found a post on Instagram that you had just as the Olympics were about to start. And you start the post by saying, a short couple of weeks ago, I was sat at home in Sydney's lockdown watching TV ads for the Olympics, still completely heartbroken, having narrowly missed out on selection. Yet here's a photo of you standing at the venue of the Tokyo Olympics, and obviously you're about to compete. So tell us what happened there. How do you go from being in lockdown, watching these ads, feeling sad that you didn't compete, weren't going to be competing, to competing at the Tokyo Olympics?
Yeah, so I'd originally missed qualifying, I guess by one spot, and came back home and did the hotel quarantine for at that time was the third time. So 6 weeks in 2021 that I'd done that with Josh. And it was a bad 2 weeks. Like it was as bad of a 2 weeks outside of like any personal tragedies. It was the worst 2 weeks I've had by a long way. Like we'd both just come back from missing qualifying for the Olympics, and it had just been like such a hard and a challenging sort of year or couple of years, really, with a lot of injuries and setbacks and things like that. And for the next couple of weeks, obviously we went back into lockdown, and I was pretty much drinking every day and not like doing anything really, just like sitting on the couch, and I was getting pretty fat and not training and not going to the gym and not running and literally doing nothing, watching TV, having a few beers, and that was it, eating. And then some sort of circumstances happened and someone was withdrawn, and I was the first allocated quota. So I sort of was the first, again, essentially like reserve. And that was, I think, like 15 days before the opening ceremony, or I think I want to say 15 or 16 days before the opening ceremony. So
wow,
I used to compete at 66 kilos, and I was about 76, 77.
Wow.
And hadn't done judo in 6 weeks, and had a bulging disc and a stress fracture in my back. And I was actually driving to my girlfriend's house, and I had a bottle of wine and Chinese in the car, and we were just going to like do what I'd done every other night, drink and eat crap. And our high performance director called, and he sort of told me the situation. He said it wasn't a guarantee, but we'd know in about 3 or 4 days. But he's like, there's probably a good chance that you're going to go. So I was like, all right. And I remember drove to her place, and like sort of said what I just sort of couldn't like believe what had sort of happened. And I binned the Chinese, and the wine didn't get drunk. And,
so to say, you threw that out straight away. That was gone.
I called my doctor and organised like to get some injections and stuff the next day, because at the time I couldn't do anything. My back was really, really bad, and called him, and he arranged to like inject, and I had a couple of them, and then I tried to train for 9 or so days before we went to Tokyo. So at the time we couldn't get into our judo club because of our judo club was outside of our LGA, or whatever you wanted to, the radius that you could travel. So me and Josh did judo in our running shoes in our garage at home with Dad at home. And we do 40 minutes in the evening, because I just was banged up, like my back couldn't do anything. So the biggest thing was just to try and lose the weight. So I'd like spend some time on the bike. I'd spend a lot of time on the bike, and then we do a little bit of judo, and then I did 2 sessions on the mat before I went. We got like an approval to go back to our club, so I did 2 sessions on the mat, one with Josh and one with a bloke who was about 90 odd kilos, and he just came in to offer to help. Did 2 sessions and did maybe 3 sparring rounds, and then got on the plane to Tokyo. So, yeah, it was a wild sort of experience, but I just sort of felt like I'd been given this lifeline, and I fully believe that I deserved to go. Like I felt like I'd missed qualifying by just like a bunch of circumstances that were a little bit out of my control. I definitely had some performances that could have been better, but I missed a lot of events in the qualifying period injured, and at the start of the year I broke my rib, and just I had a lot of stuff sort of just go wrong. And so I believed that I was good enough to be there, that I deserved to be there. So I sort of looked at it as a second opportunity, and all the way up until probably the morning of the competition, I just felt like really grateful and excited, and I didn't want to just have this opportunity to be there. I'd been there before. I knew how special that was, but I was like, right, like this is your opportunity to have a different feeling around the Olympics. And this is like your opportunity, I guess, like to sort of do myself justice, I think, at the game. So I sort of didn't feel too much pressure on anything until I was sort of standing there getting ready to compete. And it was a huge stadium, but obviously it was empty and silent. And I'd lost to this boy before. And I think when I was warming up, I'd lost a lot of weight, and I just felt terrible in the warm-up. Like I felt slow and lethargic and tired, and all the things that you do when you have lost a lot of weight in a very short period of time. And I just felt really nervous and scared. I was like, man, like I'd sort of copped I hadn't copped it, but there was like a bit of chatter that, I only got to go because of a circumstance happening. And I was like, right, I just have to like do myself justice. And the match didn't start well at all, but like I managed to turn it around and beat a boy who was really tough and had beaten me before. So that was just like a big amount of relief. And I lost my next match in a pretty close match to the Israeli boy, who I think finished 5th and was in top 6 or so in the world. And on the day, he was better. And even with a full preparation potential, I probably don't beat him. Or I don't think that I've lost him a couple of times before. But certainly, like with the prep that I had, it was a crazy couple of weeks. But certainly an experience I'm super grateful for.
Next time I have Chinese and wine, I'm just going to all of a sudden hope for a phone call that I'm going to the Olympics in 15 days. What an incredible story! How do you lose 10 kilos in like 10 days? I mean, there could be a secret into a diet business here that you can do, Nathan, to kind of put Jenny Craig out of business again.
It's certainly nothing that I'd recommend for anyone. Like I certainly don't think it's anything that you'd put in a book for anyone to follow. It was just a lot of cardio and not a lot of calories, and then a lot of sweating at the end. So it wasn't a great. It was weird because it was so exciting and there was so much to take in and to look forward to, but it was also a really hard couple of weeks. I was in a lot of pain with my back and very hungry for a large majority of that time. So I got the weight down and then had my experience.
Which I saw the footage of your win in that match against the Peruvian judoka, and like just your reaction to kind of getting that and sort of through that and everything. I mean, I love sort of hearing about that sort of mentality about, taking in that experience a little bit differently. But I mean, do you sort of reflect on that now? What are we 3 years removed from that? And is it one of the highlights of your career that you won a match at an Olympic Games?
Yeah, I think it was mostly just relief in that moment. Like I think there was like you're hanging on to so much, and it was a really hard sort of period before getting that call too. Like I didn't know if I wanted to do judo anymore, and there was just like a lot of challenge off the mat, and I'd sort of had a few setbacks, especially like mentally over the years leading up to Tokyo. So it was just like a lot of relief, I guess, that you'd endured a lot and it had sort of amounted to something. And I get when you say it like that, I don't feel so proud that I won a match at the Olympics. Like I always wanted to win the Olympic medal, and I fell a little bit short of that. But I definitely am really pleased. Like I'm proud that I guess like I had something to look at, that all of my work to get to sort of Tokyo showed for something, and it wasn't the thing that I wanted it to be, and there was no medal at the end of it. But I did remember feeling like at the end of that day, I was like, well, I did everything I could to give myself the best chance to be here. So that's like a good feeling that there's no medal around your neck, and close enough doesn't give you a lot at the Olympics. But there was at least that like sort of feeling of like content that I knew that I'd done all that I could, and that was just the result that happened.
The thing that I see from you and Josh here is I see why Team Katz exists, and you guys obviously do speaking and everything along those lines, because obviously through the adversity that you've both been through your careers and kind of turned it into what you have, you're able to sort of talk about it and sort of be so open about it. I mean, sort of fast forwarding a little bit to a question I was going to ask at the end, Nathan, but like, how important is that to you to be able to use everything you're talking about there to be able to help other people sort of through maybe their own trials and tribulations that they're going through in life?
Yeah, so important. I think that there's just this stigma around like athletes that you have to, I think to give an example, we do a lot of speaking, and especially we speak at schools. And I think when kids hear that you've been to the Olympics twice and you have a Commonwealth Games medal, they think like they don't know the difference between that and say Ariane Titmus, even though there's so much difference. They don't appreciate probably the magnitude of the difference. But I think they sort of assume that everything is just like you're some larger than life figure that it's nearly impossible to get to. And I think by just being very vulnerable and open around having a huge amount of failures and not having succeeded to the extent that we wanted to, and ultimately my career was a success for sure, but I ultimately failed in achieving so many of the things that I wanted to do. And I think by being open about that and sharing that, it makes people less afraid to have a crack, regardless of if they think they are capable of achieving it or not. And I think I don't regret like putting myself on the line to say that I was going to try and do all these things and have these huge goals. And even though there's some disappointment that follows that for sure, I think that's the only way that like I've ever known how to operate, like to have big scary goals. And if you put everything into achieving it and you achieve it, then amazing. And if you don't, then if you had nothing else to give, then some people don't have the capacity to do something. So it is what it is. But I think that's really important, especially like when it comes to like the, I guess, more personal challenges and the mental challenges. I think there's a lot of young people and a lot of old people, when we go and speak at companies and you talk to very successful people, they got plenty of their own challenges. So I think just by being very open and sharing that it's fine to have setbacks and failures and things go wrong, I think it just makes other people much more comfortable to like accept that life and they're not perfect and it's just part of life, really. I don't know a better way of sort of articulating that, but I think it just sort of allows other people to be a little bit more vulnerable and open and accept that it's not always perfect.
I love hearing that, because I think one thing we've discovered recently on the show here, and we've sort of been asking a little bit more, and you touched on sort of the disappointment of not initially qualifying for Tokyo, about how you're just drinking, you're eating, you're getting fat, stuff like that. Like it's we all have that in life. We all have moments where you feel shit and you need to have comforting moments, be it crying for a couple of days, locking yourself in a room, eating bad food, Chinese, wine, whatever it is. And it's sort of, it's okay to kind of, feel that, right? And obviously, we're human beings. We have a variety of emotions. And particularly as you're saying, like younger kids who probably, going through challenging times enough as it is, to hear from someone like yourself, from Josh and everything, to kind of, it's okay to feel this way and this is how you can, get through it and stuff like that. So very inspirational, Nathan, that you guys are obviously doing that.
No, I appreciate it. And I think it's not just, you don't just feel like that at the Olympics. Like just on the way home from Paris, we were on holiday with Josh, my partner, and a bunch of our friends, and in Croatia, having a great time, drinking, beach, everything great. And I just woke up one day like really, really flat. Like I just didn't want to get out of bed, didn't want to talk to anyone, didn't want to do anything. And like you get like that sometimes, and it's all good. Like I think I sort of told Josh, I was like, I'm just not having a good day today. Like I'm just going to sort of do my own thing. And like you take yourself off, and then the next day, hopefully you're a little bit better. And if you're not, then you try and put some steps in place to be better. But I think sometimes there's like, oh yeah, it must be such a high and such a low after an Olympics, and for sure. But there's highs and lows just in everyday life for normal people too. So I think it's something that like everyone deals with, athletes and just very normal people. And I think by being really open about it, just sort of makes it not a weird thing that people feel like they can't chat about.
You ultimately retired 2023. We'll come back to the Commonwealth Games in a moment, but was there ever a prospect for Paris? Was that the goal after Tokyo to keep going, or was it sort of a case of year by year? Because I know sort of we just obviously had Josh on recently, and he sort of touched on, his prospects and what he's thinking towards LA. But like, were you ever pushing towards Paris at one point? Yeah,
it was always the goal, probably up until the day I retired. So I especially with Josh having missed Tokyo, my goal was always like one, it was like probably twofold. One, to get back to the Olympics with Josh and to be there together. But two, I was only motivated by getting results that I hadn't got yet. Not that I didn't care about qualifying, but I wanted to be able to get to a level that I hadn't got to yet. And I wanted to push to be in the top 10 and for an Olympic medal. And I just had a lot of injuries and sort of things I had a lot of challenges, probably more off mat personal stuff than on mat. And that was definitely a challenge, but I had sort of gotten myself pretty healthy again. And we'd moved back to Sydney and I was feeling great about judo. And we went to Melbourne for a training camp and I threw a boy and he sort of landed on the back of my shoulder, my neck. And I sort of just felt like something had gone a bit wrong. And I woke up the next morning and a lot of pins and needles in my hand and started to lose like a little bit of feeling in my arm. And I just kept training and sort of saw the doctor and I didn't really go on about like how bad it was. I just sort of said that was bothering me a bit. And I came back from this competition and in the morning I was warming up with Josh and he sort of just pulled on my arm and I just lost feeling in my left arm. I had essentially no feeling in my left arm. It was just like numb. And I lost this match. And I think when I walked off the mat, I just really knew that I was done. Like I was just so drained with the mental load I think that I'd been carrying for a really long time. I think I used to always, when things were great, I would get really, really high. But when things were bad, I would get really, really low. And I would really struggle to get work, I guess, my way like out of that low. And I think with my neck just being another thing, I think in the back of my mind, I knew that it was bad and it needed getting looked at. But I just like didn't know if I had like too much more fight sort of left in me. I was just really, really drained from the mental load and the physical one for sure. But the mental one for me was just the one that I sort of just like needed an escape from. And I came home and in the end, I had cracked a disc in the back of my neck. So I needed neck surgery anyway, which put me out for probably about 6 months as it was. But I think that culminating with just like feeling like I just sort of couldn't deal with the challenges that judo was presenting me anymore, I decided to retire. So yeah, Paris was very much the goal and the thing that I was working towards. And I think that just sort of unraveled when I hurt my neck. And it might have been unraveling for a little bit prior with all the other stuff that was going on. But that was just probably the thing that it helped me make a decision because I just sort of couldn't keep going the way that I was.
Year prior, though, Birmingham, obviously the bronze medal, we heard from Josh sort of his thoughts and what was it like sharing that moment sort of with you and having that there. Your perspective, Nathan, I mean, just how special was that to walk away with a Commonwealth Games medal and again, share a similar moment with your brother there who's also leaving with a medal as well?
Yeah, it was the best. And funnily enough, I sort of never dreamed of the Commonwealth Games or winning a Commonwealth Games medal. I never really thought about it. It was always the Olympics and but it was probably my favorite judo. It's probably my favorite like judo memory and experience, like winning on that day. And I'd had knee surgery about 6 weeks before the Com Games, so I was like really touch and go as to whether or not I was going to get back for it or not. And I got back and didn't have a great day, to be honest. Like up until the bronze medal match, I was sort of really battling, and mentally I was really battling too. I had a moment where I was like thinking that was going to be my last competition for sure. When I'd lost in the quarterfinal, I was standing in the marshalling area just thinking like I just sort of can't deal with like this anymore. Like I was just so over how low it would get when it wasn't going good. And then I think I just like literally chalked right in front of me as I was getting ready to walk out. I just sort of like made eye contact and my dad and my mum and my partner and auntie were there watching. But I remember really clearly like just making eye contact with dad. And I was like, man, like yeah, he's here. Like I just sort of felt like I owed it to like us to have a real crack and ended up winning a medal. And that was the best. Like it was ultimately the Commonwealth Games doesn't mean too much for me. Like not to discredit or anything, but it just like wasn't something that I ever dreamed of, or it was always the Olympics. But for that to sort of be like having been to 2 Olympics, but that to be my favorite, I guess, memory from judo is sort of, I guess, a bit funny for want of a better word. But it was the best. It was such a good day. And funnily enough, it wasn't the day that Josh had sort of wanted either. Like he was probably capable of winning and we both sort of were, but to finish with medals together was awesome. And that was probably like one highlight a couple of challenging years post Tokyo for sure.
And great news for the sport is that it's one of the 10 that have been included for Glasgow for 2026. Obviously, they've shortened that program, but initially wasn't on the schedule for the Australian Games that were cancelled. So I know Josh kind of talked in a couple of weeks ago about sort of, he said he'd done a Commonwealth Games. It wasn't really on the agenda either, but I mean, is it important though, do you feel, for any athletes, particularly in a sport like judo, for Australia to go to these big multi-sport events to get that extra level of experience?
Absolutely. I think the Olympics can be such a daunting and overwhelming experience. And I think multi-sport events are so cool. Like, just to be around all the other Australian athletes from different teams that you don't necessarily get to mix with all the time, but you know a lot of the people. And like, our village in Birmingham was really cool. And the sevens team, the boys and girls were there. And I think there were a few other sports as well, but you know a lot of the athletes, and you sort of share that experience together. And it's just like I guess a really good opportunity to like get your foot a little bit wet at a multi-sport event before the big Olympics, if that's the sort of goal. So it's huge, and it's good for the sports profile, and our team did amazingly in Birmingham. So it's amazing for judo that we'll get to have a team in Glasgow, and hopefully, I mean, not hopefully, but for sure, Josh will be healthy and really pushing hard for that again too.
See how it all goes. Speaking of Josh, I mean, obviously after retirement, you switch more into the coaching side of things, and obviously becoming a support for Josh and other athletes. I mean, how was that going to an Olympics as a coach, supporter, like kind of that level of things, and sort of riding the emotions that obviously came from your brother as well, Josh, and ultimately how quickly, unfortunately, his campaign came to an end on day one?
Yeah, I mean, it was a really unique experience coaching anyway. Like, it was different from what I'd obviously done before. The Olympics, like, I'd only competed there. But for Josh, it was just like such a tumultuous year, and he'd had so many setbacks. So there was like a lot of gratefulness just that he was able to be there after sort of all that he'd endured over the couple of years prior, but particularly like the 6 months leading up. And there was a lot of doubt, and his prep wasn't very good. Like, we prepared as well as he could, but it was very different to what an Olympic preparation would sort of normally look like. So there was just there was a lot of just fear around like his body holding up, and yeah, it was a different experience. I certainly felt like a lot of pressure on like helping him have the best preparation that he possibly could, and I guess when you combine that with not knowing how his body was going to hold up, then it was just a very stressful sort of couple of weeks. And even though the result wasn't as we'd like sort of hoped for, I feel like there was a bit of relief for everyone when it was over, because it was just every time he was on the mat for 6 months leading up, you were worried that was going to be the session that was going to finally finish him. So it was not a pleasant preparation experience for sure. But yeah, he did it amazingly just to sort of be there. And now I think he deserves to like give himself the best shot at getting back to an Olympics as an adult, not as an 18-year-old, and to be healthy and like to give himself because I think he really would have been there or thereabouts with the girls. I think at the start of the year, he was starting to really knock on the door and beating some good boys, but that's just like what this sort of year had in store for him. So he's just got to get himself back healthy and see what he can do. But in terms of coaching, I think I was never really sure if I could get the same feeling from anything else that you do when you compete and getting ready to walk out at an Olympics or Commonwealth Games. But I get those same feelings when I'm coaching. Like, I feel nervous and excited, and all that adrenaline, I guess, is still there. So I really enjoy it. I coached the junior national team earlier this year in Europe, and then I travelled a bit with Josh. At the end of his prep, we went to Tahiti and Ivory Coast. So we were sort of all over the world. And then I wasn't in his chair at the Olympics, but I guess I was like with him personally. So yeah, it's the best. It's a cool thing that now we get to experience together, and I think helps as well shift away from, I guess, if you're just sitting at home watching the Olympics that you'd missed out on going to, it's very easy to sort of wallow in yourself and feel sorry for yourself. But I think when you just have something to completely throw yourself behind, which is Josh, and I was there helping the girls too, then you can't really help but not feel like you have a purpose there for sure.
How is it then, just from a brother perspective, like you talked about earlier, the days of throwing each other around the living room, cracks in the wall, stuff like that. Here you are coaching him. I mean, you know, the amount of times you've battled over the years, be it in a competition or that, and you know, like just kind of watching him on that level, because there's always got to be that sibling rivalry deep inside of you where you're probably going like, I could have beaten him. Like, you know, I mean, do you ever kind of, go into that kind of the sibling sort of aura with it all?
No, not at all. I think we've always been competitive, but it's always been really healthy. And like, we'll obviously jab each other for sure about different things, but like, there's nothing more than I want to be able to help him achieve the goals that he wants. And over the next couple couple of years. Anything that he does now will be beyond what I've managed to achieve, which is awesome. Like, I think it's anything I can do to help him get closer to the results that he's worked really hard for, then it would be the best. And if that ends up with him having a lot more results than I ever had, then amazing. I'll have to cop that from him too, but I'll take credit for some of it too if I'm coaching him now. So it's win-win really. But no, we always had that really healthy push, and we didn't want to be better than the other one. We just wanted each other to get as far as we possibly could and to get to do it together. So I guess it sort of helps. I was really worried sort of how my lifestyle and stuff would be post-retiring, and I knew that I would really miss the time away with him and just the lifestyle that I had. But being as involved as I am now still, it's different, but I still, I guess, get some of that same satisfaction and stimulus as well.
I can't remember if I asked him this, but I'm going to ask you this, and you can answer as honestly as you want with this one, Nathan. But over all the years that you guys have had matches against each other, be it competitive or not, obviously different weight divisions, but I'm sure you fought. Like, who's got the higher win count? Who do you think's won more matches between you and Josh?
We never fought in competition. I only ever sparred and did a huge amount of randori and stuff together. But I was always a weight division above him. So especially, and being 3 years older than him, I definitely have more wins than him on the board for sure.
Kicked his ass, let's be honest.
The fact that I think I pulled the plug at the right time, to be honest. The longer I kept going, the worse it was probably going to get. So now I get a hiding from him. I mean, not at the moment because he had his surgery a few weeks ago, but in the lead up to Paris, I was just getting flogged constantly. So that's my job now. I can say that I'm just trying to make him feel confident and everything like that. So
was there ever the temptation to drop down a weight category or for him to go up a weight category so that you could be competing against each other?
No, we definitely never wanted to compete. I mean, the Olympics, you get one per category. So there was always a motivation to be separated. I was probably going to move up after Tokyo, but things happened. I just didn't end up moving up. So he's going to move up now. And if I had still been competing somehow after Paris, then I would have moved up as well. So we would have always avoided competing against each other. It's just not something that we did it so many times in training, and we helped each other prepare so much, but there was no desire to want to compete against each other. I think that would be really challenging.
I kind of think it's a shame that you only get one per category, because there's a movie in that. If, Katz brothers get to the Olympics and all of a sudden, like, you're singing Brisbane 2032, imagine the headlines that could have had. Battling for gold, the Katz brothers, you'd have the stadium name, the Katz Arena or something like that. I don't know, like it could have different time.
In a coaching capacity, but definitely, I think my competition days at the Olympics are long.
But I want to wrap up with some get to know yourself questions. Before that, actually, just on Brisbane, I know we sort of alluded to it before. Obviously, we'd like to get some success in LA and everything, but like, how are we positioned in 8 years into a home Olympics in the sport? Because obviously, being a host, a lot of things hopefully get injected into sport. We sort of, a lot more eyes on it. So I'm not sure if that means an increase in funding or everything like that. But like, how are we positioned in the sport of judo right now? And what do we need to do in the next 8 years in Brisbane to make it bigger than it is right now?
I mean, I think in terms of just from a judo perspective, like our pathways and our junior teams are probably as strong as they've been in a long time. And it's just, I think what young people have to remember is that it's just a long, hard path, and you just have to keep at it. I think sometimes it feels like it's so long away and you're so far away from the goals that you're trying to get to. But I think having something like a home games, which obviously is like so desirable and is going to be so amazing, I think hopefully will help like people stay on that path, as this is something I really want, even when it's hard and challenging. Like, this is something that could be so amazing. And I think it's just going to come down to, obviously the funding and support and just people preparing as well as they possibly can. But I think we have a good program in place at the moment, and there's lots of good coaches around the country that hopefully can allow Australia to have a really competitive team in Brisbane. And it only takes, the French team obviously is very, very strong, but the atmosphere and support that was there.
Yeah.
Most team just grew another leg, really. Like, some of the out-of-body experiences that some of their team had in terms of performances is something that Australia obviously hopefully can replicate. So I have no doubt that there'll be a couple that you certainly wouldn't expect to have the performances that they have put in, like an otherworldly performance, because they just feel like they have this capacity on this one day. But obviously the stronger team and the more depth that we can have in the team, the better the chances that's going to be. So it's an exciting couple of years for sure, and I'm looking forward to getting to be a little bit of a part in helping that happen.
Two of my favorite memories in Paris were judo-based memories. I remember coming back from an event and I popped into a McDonald's to eat, and there was just people just glued to this TV in this McDonald's in Paris, and they were all watching judo. I think it was like the team final or something like that, France in it. And then I went back to the media center, and again, everybody was just drawn around this TV and just cheering for judo. And then I was at a boxing event, and sort of in between the bouts, they cut to a French judoka who had obviously won a gold medal in the crowd, and, stand up, and the crowd just went crazy for this guy. It wasn't Teddy Rayner, but it was somebody else. But it was just, I was like, wow, okay, this is a sport that in Australia we don't get this excited for, but they obviously absolutely loved it there because, the French are judo obsessed, aren't they?
Huge. Teddy was the face of the Paris Games, really, from the French. They love it. And it was probably the best atmosphere I've ever seen for a judo competition. And competing in Paris every year is an amazing atmosphere, but this one was just unbelievable. So it was pretty cool for sure. Yeah,
Teddy's a beast. You ever had any Teddy experiences over the years? Bumped into him, shared a beer with him or anything like that?
No beer. One of my first, there was like a big Olympic training camp before Rio, and I was just walking to the training venue, and obviously I'd seen him in and around, and he's just obviously he's 6'6" or 6'7", this huge 140 kilo black man. He's a huge, huge man. And I remember just walking with, maybe it was Josh or someone, and I just sort of felt myself like there was just a shadow that was over me, and he must have just been walking behind me, only a couple meters, and I just sort of blended into his shadow. That's how big this guy is. But no, I never really had any interaction. He really didn't compete a lot either. As he got older, I guess for a large part of my career, he'd rock up to the major events and that was sort of it. But what he's done for judo has been huge. He's sponsored by huge companies and he's huge for the sport in France. And it was amazing getting to watch him compete in Paris.
Because it's just one of those things where, in these sports where, again, we don't have the attention over in Australia, but to have these people who kind of transcend their sport, they're the Michael Jordans, the Usain Bolts, the Serena Williams, Federers of their sport, right? And just to kind of be in a period where you've got that, because, it's amazing to sort of, I guess, ride that wave when you're in these countries where judo is a much bigger deal than it is in Australia. So you can experience that atmosphere you're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. And I hope that over the next 8 years, judo becomes a little bit more popular. The crowd becomes a little bit more knowledgeable, and it'll be, I highly doubt that we're going to be able to replicate what Paris looked like from a judo perspective, just because we're not going to be where France is as a judo nation in 8 years' time. But if it could somewhat replicate a crowd that understands and was really passionate, then that would be amazing. I think that's I guess one of my fan dreams, I guess, to have over the next.
I think the beauty of that for people who remember Sydney and that with some of those events, we've had people say from the sport of handball on here before, and that's the only time we've ever competed in handball at the Olympics, but the crowds were obsessed. They were still there. They were cheering. So that's the beauty of Australia, right? We like to cheer on our athletes no matter what the sport. So very confident that the venues in Brisbane will sell out for judo and every other sport with an Australian in it. So let's hopefully we'll be cheering, not only sell out, but we'll bring some medals and some other things along the way too. So, we'll see how that plays out. Nathan, wrap up with a set of get-to-know-you style questions. Now, I wish I could say these are the same ones I asked Josh, but we generally just randomly pick and choose from the Team Canada website. This is a set of questionnaire they gave their athletes ahead of both Rio and Pyeongchang. So they're going to be similar, basically, to what I asked Josh. We always say there is a optional drawing element. You don't have to do it if you're not good in the drawing. Are you an artist? Do you like drawing at all? No. All right. I think we've had two people say yes to that. So, that kind of ties into it. So we won't make you do that right now. But I'll start off by asking you the question of your favorite Olympic moment is. Now, this doesn't necessarily have to be one of yours. It could be Kathy Freeman winning the gold medal or another sort of thing that you've watched growing up. So just overall favorite Olympic moment.
I think, I don't want to say judo. I feel like I need a break. I think probably my favorite, I want to say it was Athens when Grant Hackett won the 1,500 meters. And I remember at the end of it, I think he'd had a punctured lung or something what happened in race.
Did that.
And he's just sort of walking, and I remember just seeing him absolutely exhausted, just staggering around the court. And I just remember watching that at home being that's just absolutely insane. But the other one in London, I was in year 12 and I was in the shadow team for the Olympics. So I was never going to go. I was maybe third reserve or something. But one of the judo boys, Mark Anthony from Melbourne at the time, he beat the current world number one in under 90 kilos. And I remember it would have been like 2 a.m, and me and Josh and mum and dad were sitting there watching. And I just remember feeling like it was possible to beat the best boys in the world. So that's probably not a medal experience, but one of my favorites for sure.
I love hearing like any new one that we never get brought up on this show before. So I love hearing that. And that, the Grant Hacker one, I mean,
I'm guessing Mark would have been a new one for sure.
Yeah, I can firmly say that one has never been answered before. But honestly, the Grant Hacker one actually hasn't either. I don't think sort of any of Grant's goals were answered. But no, I like that, Nathan. You're bringing something new to the table. I appreciate that. If you could have any superpower, what would it be?
To pause time.
Ah, okay.
Feel like life just constantly is moving very quickly, and I feel like often it's really hard to be present because I just have a lot going on all the time. So for it to be able to slow down, pause, like take in some moments a little bit better. That was on the spot. That wasn't a bad answer. That's probably
that's another first. We've never had that. I like that. Kind of like having the click remote, like Adam Sandler, right? You just pause. That I like that. Let's go. Let's see if we can get 3 from 3 here for a new answer. Your favorite sports movie is?
Oh, probably either Remember the Titans or Coach Carter. I think they're my two favorite sports. I'd have to. Surely they would have been said before, though.
It definitely both have. I mean, I'm literally staring right now at the legendary Natalie Spooner's answers, and her answer is Remember the Titans. So, great one there. Are there judo? Like we talked about this with Josh about how the only judo media I could remember was a Mr. Bean episode where he did judo. But are there any judo movies or TV shows outside of that you're aware of?
Closest, obviously, like wrestling, you've got Foxcatcher. That's not a really heartwarming movie. It's a great movie, but very, very sad. So no, not judo. We'll have to see. Maybe Josh can win an Olympic medal and Olympic gold medal, and we can do something about him. He's had enough go wrong to make an interesting movie for sure.
I'm pretty sure that you're right there. I think that would kind of be a good seller of that one there. So if any TV movie people are listening, just put it out there. Your funniest childhood memory is? You shared a great one before with the waterbed, but I don't know if there's another one.
Another one would be like when you're maybe like 13, you start to learn strangles and arm locks in judo. And me and Dad used to go to judo early all the time, like before the sort of class would start, and he'd sort of help me do like some extras and stuff. And he was teaching me a strangle, and I always wanted, like, he would always make me like tap as soon as it would go on. And I always wanted to like see sort of how far I could go. And one day before training, Mum had just sort of arrived, and he was choking me, and like I just didn't tap because I didn't want to. I thought I could hold on, and he ended up putting me out. And Mum must have come into the club, and I've just looked at me face down on the mat. And obviously I come like it sounds much worse than what it is, but she went insane on my dad, and even though it was not his fault at all, I remember then he was furious at me, and it was a whole thing. So I don't know if that's the funniest, but
I was going to say it's a very funny, I guess. That works.
I'll roll with that.
I'll take that. That works. I like that. That's I always like, my dad and I used to like play wrestle because we used to watch WWF back in the day, and so you'd do the fake like sleeper hold like they would do in wrestling. And I think as a kid I used to always be like, Dad, that's not real. You can't really like knock someone out, but you've just proved you can. You can. So there you go. Your favorite pump up song? Did you have a song that when you were competing that like kind of got you in the mood as you're going out there onto the mat?
It was like so different. When I was young, I would like want to like amp myself up massively. Like I'd always listen to like Eminem and stuff like that. I used to always listen to like Till I Collapse. But then when I got older, I almost needed to like calm down. Like I was always in the mood to fight. Like I actually just needed to like calm myself a lot more. And this is like the weird, I cop shit for it all the time, but I don't know who sings it. I can't think of it got remade a few years ago, but that running up that hill, I don't know who.
Oh, Kate Bush. Yeah.
That one. And honestly, I listened to that song that many times at the comm game. It's not even funny because it just like helped me stay super calm. Because I just didn't need to get amped up. Like I actually just needed to like chill. And I think I answered that somewhere, and I just copped so much shit for it, but I honestly couldn't care less. But
who cares? Own it.
I definitely think that would be the first time you've had that answer as well. I don't know if anyone else gets.
You're ticking so many boxes on this show today, Nathan, with first answers. But no, I respect that because, like, you know, it's all well and good to get a till-eye collapse, pump you up and everything, but sometimes you just kind of need that song, right? Like, we've all got a song that just kind of puts you in a zone for whatever reason. And Cape, I mean, it could be worse. You could have said MacArthur Park. No one wants to listen about a cake in the rain, but still, like, I own it, take it. It's a popular song now again. So, you know, I bet you if you answered that, whoever was judging you, that take it differently now. So there you go. The most recent TV show that you binge watched is?
At the moment, I'm living with my girlfriend and her best friend, one of my close mates now, and we've just been smashing Love Is Blind.
Okay.
So it's not the highest quality television, but it's a good binge watch.
You need that guilty like pleasure, like it's like the McDonald's, right? Sometimes you just need a Big Mac. You know, it's not the best food, but why not?
Actually, there's one. I mean, this is how you know I live in a girl house now, but I can't think of what it's called. It's something like the secret lives of some Mormon wives. That's what it's called.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
This will end up getting clipped off, I'm sure, but it's outrageous television. I highly recommend if you need to feel better about yourself or just like watch some proper trash, then that's A-star quality.
It's I was going to say they should be making a Katz sort of documentary on you guys to kind of go on that, but no, let's let on board the Mormon Secret Housewives and whatever on earth it's called. So I'm on board with that. Another new answer. You ticking them off there. Your least favorite foods are?
I'm still not great with vegetables. I don't like tomato at all. I don't like tomato.
I'm with you. Yep. I always joke and say that I'm still 6 years old and I haven't grown out of my I hate vegetables phase. So I'm totally with you.
Yeah, I'll go with that.
Yep. No, good answer. Your favorite chip flavor is?
Salt and vinegar.
Oh, didn't even hesitate. I love someone who just knows their answer straight away. Good answer. Cool. I like it. If you weren't an athlete, what would have you been?
I mean, I love sports, so I think I would have worked like in sport media or commentary or something like that. Maybe commentating the footy would be the best. Like I love rugby league, so maybe commentating the footy.
Who's your team in the footy?
No, unfortunately, it's been a tough year, so still a sensitive topic.
Who was that again? I don't think I heard that. Parramatta.
We're a league.
So it's Parramatta,
so
was it?
It's been a tough year.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
I look, as I'm more of an AFL guy. So as a cult man, we've had our lean years. I'm a Cronulla guy in the NRL. So, you know, I fondly live on 2016. But hey, we won a final this year. We didn't go out in straight sets. So, you know, take that on one level there. Your favorite vacation spot is?
I mean, I've not had a lot of holidays in the last however many years. I think the best one I've been on lately, post Paris, we went to Dubrovnik. That was amazing. I loved it there.
Nice. I saw a lot of like athletes and sort of support staff went to Croatia after the Olympics. That seemed to be like the hotbed that everybody went to. So I feel like that's something that a lot of people need to visit.
Yeah, it's nice. Dubrovnik in particular, I would recommend for sure.
Okay, put it on the list. Last one for you today, Nathan. What's something that people usually describe you as?
I mean, most people probably something like to do with judo, but maybe passionate.
Passionate.
For one, maybe passionate.
Good word. I like it. Nathan, before we let you go, people want to follow you, your journey in coaching and everything along the line, social media. Obviously, as I said, Team Katz is a website out there for you and Josh, for what you guys are doing out there. But anywhere else people can sort of stay up to date with yourself and what you're doing in life at the moment?
Yeah, just our website, teamkatz.com.au, and then at teamkatz1 on Instagram, and then my personal, but there's not a lot. I don't know when the last time I posted on there. I'm not very active, but it's just Nathan Katz 66. So that was my weight division. I'm long gone from that now, but the name remains.
you answer my question about why the 66, but it's an obvious answer there when you kind of put it that way. Nathan, it's been an absolute pleasure, mate, to have you on the show and kind of create this history, first sibling of another guest on the show. But thank you so much for your time and being so honest and open with all your answers. It's been a lot of fun, and we look forward to your journey in the coaching sphere and kind of seeing the growth of judo continue in Australia into the future.
No, I appreciate it, mate. You're doing a great job. It's cool hearing from all these athletes and Olympian stories, so keep it up. Thanks for having me.